Okay, at least we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of there's gonna be some interesting opinions too on some of these changes.
To be honest, I'm actually a little glad that we also held off to record a day to make sure that we have the podcast information up to date with all of like the patch highlights and chaos, because I mean,
Hmm.
especially after getting these notes, that's yeah, that was a good call. That was a good call. You ready, good sir?
I'm good, man.
All right, let's do it then. Let's welcome on in everyone and say, welcome. Welcome on in, folks. For those who do not know, my name is Guest, also known as ItsGuestGaming, and wow, did we get notes. We got a lot of things said and a lot of things not even close to said. Like, it is a huge update for all of the good and for all of the what is going on with Marvel Snap right now, because already, I mean, it came out within the last few hours, last 3 hours or whatever it's been. And the way it came out is worth conversation too, but it is here, and we are going to talk about it at length. DefaultDan, knee-jerk reactions without going into it yet.
Some good, a lot of bad. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of changes in here. And this is probably one of the first big patches where I don't like all of them. But I do think that some of the changes that are in here were 100% needed, and also excited about some of the other stuff they've done. So yeah, good, bad, and ugly on this patch.
Yeah. The emphasis on certain of those phrases more than others, but I will say this to the viewers and to the listeners of this podcast for this patch conversation, as a continuation of what we were talking about on our stream when all the information dropped live. I'm going to be open and honest, but more importantly, create conversation. And I think that needs to be a trend amongst us as content creators, is that if we give feedback, whether we like or don't like something, elaborate and don't whine. So let's continue that conversation amongst the community to create conversation. Don't create attacks. So I want to make that message very clear. So here it is. It is available on Discord in detail. It is available in the in-game client. It is available on the Marvel Snap website. Kind of pieced up into different places, but you know, some you can get in some places and some you can't in others. But we got everything here on Discord. So let's talk about it. The patch highlights, and I'm not gonna read this verbatim. I don't think there's any need to. It's just mainly summarize what's important. So first off, Kitty Pryde's coming back. We knew that was coming. No big news there. We'll talk about her in a minute or so. The new feature of deck cosmetics and being able to customize every single deck's, not just card back, but also the title and the avatar you rock on top of that for each individual deck was an unexpected cosmetic little like tweak plus change that I don't think that's the biggest piece that's actually worth talking about with it. The biggest piece worth talking about, amazingly, has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that now you can go on into the client, and when you go into the client and it gives you your options to change decks, you can actually go in and there's an edit button on the home page where you can click the edit button and it will bring you to the editing of that deck. That little tiny button just to expedite a couple of taps and clicks is such a nice quality of life change. It was not mentioned, but it just makes it so much easier, man. Like, so much easier. So little tiny thumbs up, unexpected. Don't know if it was the priority, but I like it. Right?
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I like this update just again to be able to customize. It's going to depend on the person. Like, if you've got the infinite card back this season, right? A lot of people are like, oh, I like that, and they literally put it on every single deck. Doesn't really matter.
Right.
You know, being able to change your avatar and your title, for the most part, probably isn't going to really be anything that most people care about, but it is fun. Like, especially if you're infinite or whatever and you don't care. So I'm playing, you know, Korg or Rock Slide or something like that, and I want to use, like, you know, I have
extra
a rock
crunchy,
or whatever title. Yeah, like, and maybe you want to do something like that. I think that's kind of cool, but it's definitely one of those things where, like, I would have rather had card customization, even if it's just changing the border of my card. Like, I think that I think that is the thing that most people are whining about, complaining about, talking about, wanting, right? It's not that I want to be able to change my title and stuff. So again, I think it's cool. And to your point, I think the edit feature was huge, because when I'm scrolling through my deck sometimes to pick, I'm like, what's in that deck? Because I'm trying to think of the title and what's there. Yeah. So then I have to go back into my collection and go pick the deck. So now you can just hit the button. So I definitely think that was a pretty big thing, and they should have put in the notes, and they didn't.
Yeah.
So
little button, fun to discover. Moving on. The series drop updates. So we're going to go into more detail, but right now I'm just going to mention some names. We knew Master Mold, Negasonic, Teenage Warhead, and Nimrod were going to drop from 5 to 4. And we say that we knew because there's been a cadence. There's been a regular cadence of card gets released, Series 5 for 2 months, Series 4 for 2 months, drop. And there's been like 1 or 2 random exceptions in there. I think Shuri was one of them. There was a couple of them, just randomly, that they held on a little longer in Series 4 and then would drop. But that cadence wasn't followed. And some cards were expedited into Series 3, and other cards were held back into Series 4. So they held back Darkhawk and Knull. And then they expedited Ghost and Sauron and Shadow King. Like,
well, and Dazzler, because Dazzler just hit 4 as well.
Yeah, and Dazzler, you're right. Yeah, and Dazzler too. Like, it's worth kind of skipping around the patch notes a little bit about it, that they did talk about it. Yeah. But I want to talk about not necessarily their justification. I want to talk about the major miss within this, which is the fact that these notes didn't come out simultaneously. And I honestly think it was a genuine mistake. And the reason being is because if you go into Discord, it could show you, like, granted, I'm on Brazilian time. So it says it dropped at 12:07. So that drops at 11:07 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So 1 hour different from what's on my screen. Exactly to the minute, 1 hour later, scrolls on down, at 07 again is when the card acquisition update also then went out there. I legitimately think there is a small hour discrepancy somehow in there. I could be, and I'm not trying to justify it with secondary. I legitimately think that might have been the case. Either way, though, that sucked.
Well, there's another piece here, right? So the other thing was the Steam client update notes came out prior to the Discord notes. And in the Steam client update, they only had this first half. So same thing there. It was already an uproar because we didn't get this follow-up explaining why some of these changed. And if you look at the list, like another card that was omitted here was Shanna. So Shanna also went to 4 at the same time Dazzler did, the same time Shadow King did. And so you're looking at it as like, well, why didn't she go to 3 like the rest of them, right? And I think it's because they're trying to still make her work in some cases. But it's one of those things where, like, reading these cards, there's no sense to it. But I will kind of say, before we get into that other stuff, the acquisition stuff, which we'll talk about a little bit, I think the hard part about this is Second Dinner never gave us that cadence. Second Dinner never told us how things are going to work. And the community, whether it's the websites, content creators, whatever, found a pattern and decided to say, this is the pattern, right? And there's the graphs out there saying, like, here's where you can predict 2 months from now when the cards are going to move. And everybody got hung up on that, but it was never said that this is how it's going to work out. And so this is one of the first times it hasn't magically, lined up with that. And I think that this is where, when we look at this, and again, when we talk about card acquisition, that we're going to, they have some comments about, I think this is the first one everybody's like up in arms because it didn't match our expectations rather than what's really going on with the devs. You know what I mean?
I love you to death, but I think you're absolutely wrong. So the reason I say that is because they set it down further. They actually justified it in the later notes where they talk about the series cadence, specifically stating that in future series, they're now going to expedite it differently. That instead of going from a same schedule, there it is. Currently, all cards are on the same schedule, starting in Series 5, drop to Series 4, drop to Series 3. They know that that's going to be the cadence. Now, like I said previously, there were 1 or 2 cards that were held back But the thing that got me on this, and I think is the biggest gripe of the community right now, is the fact that all of us, there was every single person in this community expected that transition due to the established pattern, and that conversation was never had prior. Because, for example, I said it on stream, if this latter half of notes that we got later on, if that was told to us a week ago, that, hey, these drops are going to happen and when, and here's why, I think the whole community would have been a little, oh, that sucks, but at least I have a week heads up. This is what's going to happen then, just when it comes to the series drops alone. Thank you for that advisory. Yes, I will now spend my 3,000 because I unpinned Knull, or I unpinned Darkhawk, because those are the two that we're so hung up on.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. I read that differently than you do. That cadence that they're talking about later on in the notes, it talks about the cadence of 5 to 4 to 3. And later in that sentence, they're saying that there will be cards that go from 5 to 3, meaning the cadence of going from 5, 4, 3 now can be different. We can go from 5 to 3. We can go right into 4. We can change where cards are going. I don't think that cadence that they're referring to means the 2 months, the shifts. And so that's where I'm saying, I don't think they ever set up this, hey, this card's going to 5. 2 months later, it's going to go to 4. 2 months later, it's going to go to 3. And I do think that we've seen that pattern, but this is the first time we're seeing things like Darkhawk, where everybody, to your point, I get it. I get why people are upset. People were expecting Darkhawk to drop, and then, today they unpinned him, and now he's not dropping. It's rotated around, and they're going, crap, now I got to wait for, potentially days before he comes back up into my shop to pick him up. So I get that. I'm just saying that what we have to remember is it was never specified that the 2 months was always a thing.
I don't think it necessarily even needed to be specified, though, because if there's any argument that's come up regularly in Marvel Snap, it's pattern recognition. And there's already enough conversation around matchup pattern recognition, and we have gotten that associated. We are human beings. We are going to recognize patterns. We recognize it's going to take 2 months, it's going to go down, and then 2 months again, it's going to go down. When something gets thrown off, they talk about it. But to have the rug pulled out underneath us on two of the most talked about and anticipated cards to be able to drop a series, and then day of them basically, Matumbo us and go, no, that's why the community is upset, is that the communication on this was absolutely terrible when it comes to specifically Darkhawk and Knull. Look, I don't think anybody's complaining that they're going to get extra Series 3 cards now accessible to them. Whether they're pieces of shit or not is irrelevant. It's just the fact that the main two that we are all talking about, and as an entire creator community, we all have said, hey, Darkhawk, Knull, going to be dropping soon. Just hold off a little bit longer. Just don't do it in the next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, like this month. Just wait, it's dropping. Save your 3,000 tokens. And now it's like, well, you could have been playing with the card, and now you haven't. So they actually held back their own economy because people didn't spend the tokens 3 weeks ago like they could have.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that it stings and it burns because it was good cards. Again, if they would have picked a random card, right? If they would have been like, hey, you know what? Ghost is going to stay in 4. And it's Ghost and Dazzler. They're going to stay in 4 a little bit longer. I know they're expedited, so it's a bad 1-to-1, but let's just say, and they were like, hey, or it's Sentry, right? Sentry and Silver Surfer, we're going to leave them in 4. Darkhawk and Knull, they're going to move down to 3. I think if they would have done that, the community, yes, would have called something out, but they wouldn't have got mad. I think that the reason they got mad is specifically the two best cards that are currently in 4 are staying in 4. And and I do agree that it creates this uncertainty. There's a lot of people now being like, well, are they ever going to leave 4? Is this the new mini bad, right? Like, because we got the big bads up in the 5 that are always 5, and now they're like, are these mini bads or whatever with Knull? I get that.
Coin the
I'm
term
just saying,
kind of bad. I want kind of bad as the official bird. Yeah, they're the kind of bads. They're just like, there's the big bad. Mini bad sounds like you remember when Yzma was turned into a cat in Emperor's New Groove? That's what I think of when you say mini bad. When you say, kind of bad, it's like, ooh, like kind of scary.
It's like
Darkhawk is kind of scary. Yeah, exactly. It's like
Bowser's
Bowser's
in the
Kids.
Mario game.
Or even just the Vileplume, not the Vileplume, that's the wrong game, but even the little like what's it name that pops out of
the plants,
the plants, yeah, like those are kind of bad because they could kill you.
Yeah.
Like that's just like Bowser, but they're just kind of bad. That's how I feel about Knull and Darkhawk. They're kind of bad.
Yeah.
You know, they make the decks they're in way better because they're kind of bad.
Yeah. And again, kind of going back to it, I mean, I think the biggest thing is the reason why people are upset about it is they're translating this to economy. They're translating this to being huge sellers, not coming to the free market. Right. And again, I get it. I just think it's still, my stance on it is I still think that this cadence, this thing that everybody's, quote unquote, figured out of the 2 months, it was never specifically stated. So yes, does it suck? 100%. The community doesn't like it. We need to look at it. And as we talk about kind of the notes a little bit later, we'll explain it a little bit more. But yeah, it's not a good look. Again, some of that bad / ugly that we talked about in these patch notes.
Yeah. There's another after effect that'll come from it that we'll talk about. But let's move through the notes and then we'll come back to this topic a bit.
Yeah.
Ranked mode change. This one, I am a huge fan of.
I hate it. I hate it.
I am a huge fan of it. The ranked mode change, where the number of cubes required to rank up has decreased from 10 to 7. So you no longer need a nice even 10. Now it's an awkward number of 7, but there's good reasons behind it because I figured out why. And then the number of bonus ranks gained when tiering up has been reduced from jumping 5 ranks to jumping 3 ranks. So once you hit that, what would be like the increment of 10 threshold, let's say 50, it would then shoot you, instead of up to 53, it would shoot you up to, instead of 55, it'll now shoot you up to 53. But each rank takes less to do so. And if you did the math on it, it used to take you 50 cubes to go from, 55 to 60, if you will. And it now takes 49 cubes to go from 53 to 60, if you know what I mean. So in a way, it was a 1 cube for free change. But why don't you like this? And then I'll talk about the rest after.
All right. So I am on probably the side that everybody disagrees with. So again, I come from Magic. I come from very hardcore, GPs, opens, trying to make it to, the Worlds and Players Tour and stuff like that. So when I see this, when I saw Infinite in this game, when I started playing it, I knew that only X% of people will ever make Infinite. I come from Arena where Mythic is a very hard thing to get. And literally there's only a finite number of people who can be Mythic in Arena. And so coming here, I feel like the community, because Snap is so open to the public, right? It's a 5-minute game. It's super easy to make the decks. It is a lot easier than Magic and that style of game. So they had to make it easier for the average card player to play. I'm not saying everybody who plays is average. I'm just saying the average player to play. Right. So because Infinite has cool things like card backs, that has always been the discussion of, well, I want the card back. How do I get the card back? Because I can't buy it. So this last season, or whenever they made the change to give you the 5 free levels, I didn't like it because I think it cheapens getting to Infinite. And now we're taking it a step further. Now, again, I get it. When you get there with your 3 free levels now, it's similarly the same climb, but it's different because now if you start losing ranks, it's 7 cubes to go back up the rank. So I just feel like this in general cheapens what it means to get to Infinite. And this comes from a person who's gotten Infinite pretty much every season, except for maybe the first season I was playing back in the beta, because I didn't realize how important it was in my mind, right? It's not important to some people. That's what it is. But I just think it cheapens it. And I think that the reason why they're doing that is because of Conquest. I think that they're doing it for Conquest to make Infinite more achievable, and Conquest being the one that's the bragging rights of getting further and further and further. But in general, I think it cheapens Infinite.
Okay. Here's why I think it actually helps Infinite. Because the journey to Infinite specifically. Because once you're Infinite, people are goofing off now. People know that you can't fall below 100. They're actually having fun with certain decks. And it's kind of like the Cool Kids Club in the sense where I don't feel bad if I put together a crappy deck but I can't afford to do so. And I can't have fun, quote unquote, doing it any earlier because I have this daunting climb. Now, the climb itself is exactly the same. If I started my season at 55 this season and I climbed from 55 to infinite, it would take me just as many cubes next season to start from 53 and go up to infinite, minus what, 4 cubes? Like, that's it. So it doesn't change the actual amount in which you need to go up, because it should be about progression upward. It shouldn't be about regret of regression downward. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is the matchmaking and how this actually tremendously helps the matchmaking system. Because what it's going to do is it's going to narrow the pool of your opponents down to a smaller pool, more accurately reflecting where you really are in the ranking system. Because we know from the devs that it goes 30 ranks up and 30 ranks down. So now if I was at, let's say, nice in the middle, rank 50, it seems to be my favorite number on these examples, so just run with it, all right? Rank 50. At the current, prior to this patch, it was 30 ranks up, 30 ranks down at 10 cubes each, right? So that gave 10 times 10 times 3. Okay, so 300 cubes worth of potential ranking people it could pair up with below you and above you. So that's 600 cube ranks, using decimals, if you will, of potential pools in which you could be paired up. Now, with the 7 cube rank system, that shrinks that from 600 down to 420. So it narrows the pool of matchmaking for those who are ascending on the ladder. And because of that, it will more accurately find someone who is more closely based to your skill level as you're going up the ladder from the mid ranks up until Vibranium when you get to 70. Now, once you get from 70, that's the climb. That's the tough climb, right? You're trying to get to infinite, and you're competing against people that are trying to get to infinite. But there's no reason that it should have someone 600 cubes away that I could have been paired up with. If I was at rank 99, I technically would have gotten paired up with someone could be as low as rank 40. Sorry, as rank 70. But by doing that now and having it be a smaller cube pool to pull from, it more narrowly picks the person that you play up against. So those who are trying to get to infinite, they're all really trying to get to infinite. That doesn't change. This is for the mid-game player who's trying to reach Omega for the first time, or I should say Vibranium for the very first time, who are trying to move up into those better rewards, get to that level 90, 500 gold. Like, this is to help that part. And for the majority of the player base, that is a huge win.
No, I just think it's one of those things where I see what they're doing. They're, again, to your point, not necessarily making it easier. I see the matchmaking being a good thing, like you're explaining. It's just one of those things where, you know, you mentioned at the beginning, being able to play a fun deck and things like that in Infinite. Like, that's going to go away in just a little bit anyway when we start to get the rankings in Infinite for the most part. So that, you know, bragging rights and whatnot. But it's just one of those things where if they're going to get to the point that they're doing this so that it's easier to do your climb, it's easier to get to Infinite and things like that, then Conquest becomes the new quote unquote ladder. It becomes the new place where you're bragging, and then just get rid of Infinite, get rid of this climb, because I do agree with you. It feels bad when you hit 90 and then you jump up to 95 and then all of a sudden you have a really bad losing streak and now you're back to 88. And then when you hit 90 again, you're at 90 and you have to go all through all 10. I mean, it's happened to me. It doesn't feel good. And I get that some of this is to help with a little bit of that as well. But it's just one of those things where I feel like when we cut out cubes, when we cut out ranks, again, think about this a couple months ago where you literally had to climb 10 ranks when you hit 90. You didn't get these 5 free ranks. And in some cases, you lose 5 ranks and you still got to do 10. But in a lot of our cases, when you have good MMR and you see a lot of bots or whatever, depending on your account, like 5 levels isn't that hard. I went from 95 to 100 in an hour and 15 minutes, something like that. So, and I didn't see a lot of bots in that actually, because I've taken my time this season, but it's definitely one of those things where, like, if I would have had to go 10 ranks, that would have taken me a lot longer than just the 5.
A whole 2 hours.
Maybe. but within that, right? Like, well, I mean, but like within that, I went from 95 down to 93, and then back up from 93 to infinite, and that took me a little over an hour to do that. So
I got you.
It's just one of those things where like that extra 5 made it feel easier. It made it feel cheapened when I've done infinite multiple times. So I don't know. I mean, for the general public, it's probably a good thing. For the people who look at this of like, again, coming from Arena and having that badge of I made Mythic and this is, you know, whatever. We saw when they did that first change of 5 free ranks, we saw tons of people hit infinite that had never hit infinite before. And I would love to know what the numbers are. Are we looking at we've gone from 1% to 7%? Are we looking at we went from, you know, 5% to 20%? We won't ever know those numbers, but it would be interesting to see that, to say, okay, if I look at this and they said, hey, we went from 2% to 5%, I could look at this and go, all right, we're good. Continue to make these changes. If you're only at 5%, it makes sense to get more people up here. But if now we're at 20% of people make infinite, I feel like that's too many. So again, that's a hot take. A lot of people will not like or agree with, but I'm just kind of saying that is what we are now at, and maybe Conquest alleviates some of that.
I think it'll alleviate some of it, but I'll just gladly let everybody, you know, rip you apart in the comments.
Yeah, that's all right. Let me know.
Yeah. Other little change. They had a press and hold feature when you're purchasing something from the shop. I tried that earlier. It's a nice little update. It's a nice little update, you know, to literally tap and hold. It does like a little zoom in animation around it. Like finally. Okay. So it's a nice, like 2-second hold. And it should help with that little bit of a, oops, I accidentally bought this 1200 gold variant I wasn't thinking about getting, you know, like it's good.
Yeah. I've done that before. I bought, well, it wasn't 1200. I bought a 700 gold, like Vulture or something at some point where I accidentally clicked. I was like, oh, it was a while ago, but I never use that card. I don't run move. So I can
you will next season. All right. And then next up, they also added Series 1 to Series 2 labels to the cards. Sure. A little bit of audio updates in different languages. Balance update. It's a light week, they said, but in many ways, it is a very heavy week. It's a very dark week. We
killed some decks. We killed some decks this week.
We killed quite a few decks, and I'm going to refer back to, I think it was exactly now a little under a week ago, a little over a week ago, whatever it was. I titled our podcast, that episode, Fixing Wave Fixes Everything. And they did.
I don't know.
We'll get there. I know. All right. So first up on the list was Kitty Pryde. We know the Kitty Pryde version, right? The new one that's going to be bouncing into the hand, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Every turn.
Have you played against her or played with her yet?
I played against it in this version now. I like once or twice, just quickly before recording. But I have an idea for her of something, but I'm not talking about it because it's a strategy I want to hone for a tournament I'll be in next week. So I'm gonna leave my Kitty Pryde deck.
You're in a tournament next week?
Yeah, surprise. I'm doing a tournament next Friday with Hannah's Cat Cafe. And
nice.
Yeah. It's my first tournament since the very first ever streamer invitational. So like publicized style tournament. So I'm looking forward to that. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Nice.
When I get more information to put out stuff, I'll put it up on Twitter and on the Twitch streams as well. But Kitty Pryde.
If you need to battle mode anything, let me know.
I will.
I'll put my skills up against you.
I'll gladly. I'm going to be picking your brain. Trust me. The new Kitty Pryde, you know, now with this, you know, need to play mechanic on turn 6, I think is the only thing that really has people up in arms, which is you do all this work and then you can't choose to leave it on the battlefield turn 5.
Yeah.
You cannot run a turn 6 thing unless if you bounce her down to 0.
Yeah. Yeah, with Beast. Essentially, it's one of those things where I played against her a little bit earlier today. I did the update and I played probably 2 or 3 matches. This is already an infinite. So kind of looking at that, and the bounce deck is pretty insane. It went off really quickly and it got really big before I realized it got so big because they did the Beast Kitty Pryde thing. But to your point, I mean, I played with Kitty for weeks before, 2 weeks before they took her away. But the fact that you could leave her or essentially quote unquote move her, right? I mean, she went back to your hand, but then you played her. So technically you were just kind of moving her and she was getting power on the board or leaving her. And so when we were doing that, this makes it feel a lot worse because of the turn 6, but I got my opponent with Spider-Man. So if you're playing Kitty, remember this, because I'm going to Spider-Man whatever location your Kitty's at. She's going to go back to your hand and you're not going to be able to play her. So it allows you with Spider-Man and some of these cards to lock her from being able to be played back down because she can't be left. So in that particular match, I think the Kitty was like an 8 or something like that. They literally lost 8 on that location and couldn't do anything about it. So it's a fun card. Now keep in mind, like Professor X will do the same thing, because at the beginning of the turn she goes back to hand. It's before you've played your card. So you have to do it right. But anyway.
Yeah.
Actually, no.
It's going to be exciting.
I said that wrong. Professor X will not work. Professor X will lock her into the location. She can't be picked up.
Right, because
so
his effect is active towards the end of the turn. That's why I was like, that's the case. That's amazing. I'm sitting here like,
no. It's just Spider-Man that does it.
Interaction,
which is so good.
Okay, good.
But anyway,
thanks for clarifying that.
Fun card. Yeah. Fun card overall. Glad she's back, but I've got to do a lot of experimenting with her.
Yeah, just like I need to experiment now with Crystal finally, because Carbon has been trying to get a Crystal buff for months, and now Crystal finally gets a buff. It's a full-on look. She's still a 4/4 on reveal, but now it's anywhere, and now it's each player draws a card.
No.
And
so there was a difference here.
I'm so stuck on this. Like,
there's
it's
a huge
cool, it's good,
here.
but like, just if I like the mechanic, that's the thing. Like, do I think that this is worthy to be played for 4/4?
No. So she is a bad stone. She's a bad infinity stone, because all the stones let you draw cards, right? She's a 4-drop draw card. Oh wait, by the way, your opponent also draws a card. So it's not like Maximus. Maximus is a 3/7. If you make her a 4/6, I still don't think she's good, because why would you not just play White Queen? Draw one of their, like, you get information from their deck and you get a 6-drop that's a good card. You may throw this out there and get your Korg that you didn't care about playing at this point, and they just picked up their leader or their Doom, right? So like, this was terrible. You're not shuffling your hand like you were originally. Like, they should have just left her effect, made her be able to be played anywhere, and I would have liked it more. They should have given her one more power, a 4/5, and did that. I would have liked her more. But the fact that her power did not change, you draw a card, they draw a card. I think that giving them a card off a 4/4, terrible, because at this point we had a 3/7 that you gave them 2 cards and you didn't care because it was 7 power on a turn 3. A turn 4, there's way too many better cards than this.
So then I guess I might put her in a Dino deck, like at most.
At most, or a collector deck at most.
Yeah, exactly. Dino.
No, it doesn't even do anything with collector. It's just Dino.
Well, I'm saying
it didn't come from outside the game.
The style of deck in general, like
yeah,
something along those lines. But I found the one line I found in here a little peculiar. In the description was they outright said, but the tricky thing is that we don't want an effect like crystals to be strong. They don't want card generation to be strong. And that just is hysterical, because of one, you've got a big bad that does that in 5-fold. Then on top of that, you've got, Adam Warlock, where on the opposite end of the conversation, it's like, okay, we know it's not strong because you made him a 2/0 and he's still one of the probably bottom 10% of cards played.
Yeah.
Even in a negative
I would
deck,
play him over Crystal.
Yeah, I would too, because at least it's a lower cost.
Yeah,
for that amount of effect. And then if we're considering it a penalty to go to the other person, it's like, do you play her in a Ronin deck? Does that really help you in a Ronin deck? Like,
no,
I'm not a huge fan of it overall, but it's like they swung and they hit a foul ball. They made contact, but they didn't really keep it in play.
Giving them a card, there's only a good spot to give people a card, which is either turn 6, like you're playing with a Surfer deck with Maximus,
Right.
They get 2 cards that don't matter, or doing it super early to where they've already getting other cards, whatever, I'll give them 1 more, which is similar to still Maximus. I think the problem with the turn 4, I'll give you a card, is you may have just given them their finisher, their Galactus, their whatever they were missing, and you just gave it to them. And I think that is too harsh to have 4 power.
Just think this through for a second. Ready? Zabu, Wong, Crystal.
You can have 2 cards.
Through. You draw 2.
All right.
Here's they do also.
Here's what you do. You have to somehow play Widow and her.
Yeah.
So that way you get the card and they don't. But that's a turn 5 move at most with the Zabu, and that still doesn't really work. So it's just, maybe if she was a 2/4, it's too strong, but I'm just saying maybe. But no, I mean, at a 4/4, not good. Even at like a 3/4, I don't think it's good.
Right.
I don't know.
Speaking of 3-cost cards.
Yes.
You ready to talk about the big one?
Oh my gosh. I was looking through my decks. And I think I have to delete half of them now.
I know you love this archetype.
I haven't played half of them in forever, but Wave
it's
going.
Dead. She is dead.
In the way this wording is. So here's the thing. I think this was a good move, but the ripples from this move are going to be felt everywhere. And I know you're going to get into this because I'm pretty sure I already saw you post it up in the creator channel earlier. But essentially, if you guys don't know, the way it worked before was when she was revealed, the cards that they had or the cards that you have and they have in their hand went to 4. Then you got cost reduction on top of it. So that's why we had the ridiculous Deathwave move decks, the She-Hulk, the whatever, that would change them to 4 and then put their effects on top. Death could be free. She-Hulk could be a 2, all kinds of crazy stuff. But now we're saying after all effects have gone through, we're now going to change them to a 4. So this stops a double play on turn 6. There's nothing that can play through this on turn 6. And so this is going to affect a lot of stuff. And I'll let you kind of talk to it. But essentially, it's not just what you're thinking. It's Zabu and Sarah also being affected by this.
Majorly. This specific combo of knowing that it's going to turn everything to 4 and then having on the battlefield also, having Sarah down early somehow, or having, more importantly, Zabu down on the battlefield. And then he technically, with his ongoing, would turn all 4s down 1 to bring it down to a 3. Or any previously 4-cost card, I should reiterate, bringing it down to a 3. And that does not happen. You cannot do Wave 5 into Darkhawk and Mystique on 6 while Zabu's on the battlefield. You can't do that anymore. If you look at how it lays it out in the game, like if you click, once a card is on the battlefield, you can click into it, and in the top left-hand corner, it shows you like the pluses and the minuses that happened along the way. Or while it's in your hand, it does that. Like, ooh, it lost 2 from Scorpion, +1 from Kamartaj, or, all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It'll show you the reduction. And then afterwards, it shows equal sign, big red or green for wave. So it does show you that it's happening afterwards. And it completely changes how wave is used. It reinvigorates the idea of wave on 3, tremendously hurts wave on 5, and reinvigorates several very big cards into the meta. And I apologize in advance for being one of the first people to say this, but I agree with the conversation that's already starting around it. I think that this could be the beginning of seeing again more Sandman.
Yes, I had the same thought.
Tremendously push that agenda.
So I 100% had that thought, because Wave now, if you are playing Wave as the Death Wave, whatever deck, which means I'm playing this on 5 to stop your double turns. I'm playing this on 5, which with Kitty Pryde returning, Hit Monkey, things like that will come back. So you're using her exactly like a Sandman. I'm going to play her on 5, and I'm going to shut down your side, because my side, I'm going to play Doom. I'm still getting 15 power on all 3 of my locations. but I'm doing it to specifically stop you from playing multiple cards. And Sandman does the same thing on 5. So I think, to your point, I would agree. I think that the Sandman ramp whatever style deck will make a rise back. Wave is not dead, because Wave is still a turn 3 Galactus play. Wave is still a turn 3. I play this into my turn 6 Doom, whatever, with a turn 6 Odin, right? Like, or my turn 4 Doom into a turn 6 Odin or whatever. Like, you're still going to have those plays, but it definitely stops this cheaty mana, which is what we said in Magic, right? Any card that you could make free was always a problem. And the fact that we're doing that with Death, She-Hulk, and some of these other cards, I think it's a good move. It's going to be hard, though, because like I said, I'm having to delete a lot of decks that are in my little, roster of decks, because a lot of them had Wave, She-Hulk, X, as a finisher. And I want to go back to one other thing with the Darkhawk decks is this will stop. And I think that this will truly shift how we were looking at the Darkhawk decks, because we had this huge rise, which is the deck I used to get to Infinite practically the whole season. Darkhawk, Iron Lad, Rock Slide, whatever, because I still had Wave on 5 into She-Hulk, whatever. But my worst case was, even if I didn't have that combo, I had Zabu out, I waved on 5 and I got Darkhawk Rock Slide, or I got Darkhawk Iron Lad, or whatever, right? So it's one of those things where that deck now is still going to be decent, but it's just going to transform a little bit, probably bringing back Mystique, probably bringing back cards like, Dino, and giving you a couple more big hits than that whole go super over the top on turn 6.
Yeah. It's a big death. It's a big kill. It really shoots out a boatload of very strong decks in Marvel Snap, and it levels out quite a few decks. It might also give breath to a couple of new styles. Like I'm brewing one in particular that does include Kitty Pryde with the new wave. So once that's a little bit more comfortable, I'll come out with that. But I like that they served a pile of dog shit with a cherry, because they also then said, listen, I know we killed Deathwave, so we'll make Death a little cheaper so you can use her in the Death deck, and also buff up the Galactus deck, like, which is a win and a loss, I guess you can kind of look at it. But like, I get that they're trying to incentivize Destroy. We said it last week too. The devs have a bias towards Destroy in a positive way. They love Destroy stuff. They want to blow shit up all over the place, and they want to do it repeatedly, and they want to do it strong. They buffing up Venom. Now they're, technically buffing Death. Like,
I mean, it was needed in the fact that if you're not using Wave, if you're going back to just the true old school Destroy decks, getting Death to be free is very difficult, especially with right now, especially with a month ago, there's not a lot of ones being played. There's just Sunspot, right? Now we have Nebula, Sunspot, and Kitty Pryde coming, so maybe your Killmonger hits a couple more targets than it normally would have with Yondu and things like that. So maybe we can start getting her down to a 1 or 2 easier because of those cards. But yes, it's definitely one of those things that when you look at Death without Wave, she's usually a 3-drop. She's usually a 4-drop, somewhere around in there. Because you're not doing the all-in Carnage killing a whole bunch of 1-drops, Killmonger actually hitting a bunch of stuff, Deathlock killing some stuff. So yeah, I think it's a good move. And like they said, even in the notes here, hey, if it's still too hard to get her out, we may adjust her again. But to your point, I think by seeing Wave and Death, now everybody's brain goes to Galactus. And I do worry, I don't believe Galactus is the best deck in the game. I do not think Galactus is overpowered, but I do worry that Galactus is such an easy deck, and that Galactus is one of those things where there are a lot of decks out there that just cannot beat Galactus. You don't have the answers. You didn't draw them. It's free cubes, whatever it is. With these changes, we're going to see a lot of people that instantly go, hey, Galactus didn't get touched. And all I see everywhere on Twitter is how good Galactus is because everybody hates it. And we start to see a big uptick in Galactus because of that, which means play your anti-Galactus cards. Take them down. But I think that's my worry right now with the meta over the next week or two is you're going to see two decks. Kitty Pryde, hit me, whatever, because people want to play with Kitty because it's a brand new Series 5 card that everybody got. And the second one being Galactus because you look at this and go, my deck's going to be easier to use. I can use Wave on 3, so.
There's another point to the Galactus rise that I'll talk about a little later on in the scrolling, but I think there's an even bigger reason for it. And then there was a text only change that happened to White Queen. They just re-articulated what her effect does. It was draw a copy of the highest cost card in your opponent's hand. Now it's copy the highest cost card in your opponent's hand into your hand. I
think you used to get it with Widow Bite in hand, and that's why they changed the wording.
Like, I just didn't think it was confusing. Like, I didn't think this was a patch-worthy update, but that's neither here nor there. Either way, it happened.
It's rule mongers getting out there going, "Why? I gave them a Widow's Bite. How do they have my 6 drop?"
Right.
So that's what it was, and they've had to fix a few of these because of that. So
true. Not draw, copy. Got it.
The whole Yondu killing Wolverine.
Yeah. True. There are a couple bug fixes also that they threw into this. Nothing 911 really jumps out at me as like, here's a big thing. The two biggest ones, I mean, the light one is they think they fixed the whole free season pass variant thing that happened as a bug twice in a row. But more importantly is the Jeff one where you couldn't move Jeff if he was bounced by Beast, which kind of took him out of that potential, but that's a really big synergy to be able to play out there. So that's now fixed. So I'm actually going to be experimenting with that specific synergy myself, but there's not any major ones outside of that. And when it comes to the bug fixes, and there's a load of things they're aware of that's up on the website too. So if it wasn't mentioned as a fix, chances are it's in that list. And if it's not, ask about it in Discord,
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Part 2, which came out an hour later, an hour after they told us about all the movement of null and not null and all this stuff. Okay, then we got this update, which just irks me that they didn't come out simultaneously, yet alone this should have really come out first. They finally then elaborate a little bit further on flexible series release. So long story short, they basically want more cards to be more fun, and they want more people to get more access to them. So they're going to start premiering some cards also in Series 4, starting next month. So in what we believe to be the Spider-Man potential month, according to the data mines, which is always subject to change, some of those drops are going to be into Series 4, and they articulate right off the bat, 2 of them are going to be only 3,000 tokens apiece. Now, I don't know if that standard stays true regularly, that 2 cards will always drop into Series 4, because that's a lot more attainable. But I do think that's also proof that they're listening.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, if you look at the community, you look at what the complaints are, it's card acquisition. A lot of people get in this game, and when you're going through Series 1 and 2, you get cards like nonstop. You have the whole, collection level, before you actually get to collector level where you're just opening cards and you're doing all that. You get into Series 3, and we'll talk about that as well in a minute, of they're going to make it easier to get Series 3 cards. But when you're going through Series 3, you're still getting cards pretty regularly, every 6 caches or something like that, right? But then you hit a big wall. Series 4 is 1 in, was it 40? 1 in 40 caches. So you have to like cross your fingers, and it's blocks. So it could be 1 in essentially 80 if you're really bad with luck, and stuff like that. So yeah, they're listening, because there's a lot of people that dropped off the game, or they slow their play of the game because they're like, I'm playing the same deck. It's been 2 months. The one card I opened was, Shayna, I don't know, whatever card it is. And they're like, I'm not using that card. And so my deck doesn't change. This is boring, right? Quote unquote, this is boring. So I love that they're listening about this and they're saying, hey, you know what? Instead of everything going to a 5, because everything doesn't warrant a 5. We said this in the past. Cards like Ghost, even Snow Guard, and some of these cards, like they're not Series 5 worthy. Put them in 4, people may pick them up. Like Stegron. I think if you would have dropped Stegron in 4, I would have picked him up.
Same
but
here.
the fact he's in 5, he's there. And, you know, I'm not saying cards need to go all the way to 3, but there's a chance, even within these notes, they may go right to 3. Like it just comes down to the fact they're kind of opening themselves up to say, hey, we may do that. And it wouldn't surprise me.
It's a really positive thing that they're listening to the community on this, because it brings hope for me for the other part to it, which is the flexible series drops. Because as much as we preached the idea as a community, content creators and non, the idea that, hey, you should probably release some cards also into Series 4 or maybe directly into Series 3, you know, that would be great. We would love that. We would take part in that. We'd enjoy that. We made our words known. They listened, and it's coming. I hope they hear our words when we say this. And I'll be the first to do it here on the podcast, because I know it's not your specific style. So in the flexible series drops, they articulate that going forward, they're going to exercise more flexibility in what cards drop series and when. Sometimes this means preserving the series of a card, meaning leaving it where it is, like Thanos and Galactus. And then other times they may drop a card from Series 5 to Series 3 because they just want more people to experiment with the card.
Yeah. Snow Guard. they
Marvel
have no
Snap
data.
devs.
They have no data on Snow Guard. They need it. They got to throw her in 3 to get that data.
Okay. I need to breathe. Because for lack of a better term, Marvel Snap devs, this is really fucking stupid. And I'll explain why, for 2 reasons. 1, it's actually going to hurt your economy. And 2, it's going to cause more public outcry and chaos than anything else you've done yet. Here's why. The outcry is the fact that we are not sure if a good card is a good card. And then when you bring it from 5 to 3, you've outright told us, you were right. It's a bad card. We want more people to try messing with it. We're going to move it to Series 3. It's admission of guilt. And that's a huge problem, because then it makes you, second dinner, look awful. The second thing that this does is it varies value, so much so that you don't know what 6,000 tokens is actually worth. Is it worth a card that drops at 6,000 tokens at the end of the month, no one buys it, and then 1 week later is now in Series 3? Or does this mean that 6,000 tokens is only going to be worth 6,000 tokens because of the big bads? And what that just did by announcing that you could have cards stay longer in a series or expedite out of a series and give no consistency or rhythm in any potential way, shape, or form, plus 1 month, minus 1 month, maybe. But to say there's no rhythm whatsoever in this system, congratulations, you just justified to every single member of the community the best value for your collector's tokens is exclusively the big bads. And you've now refined the spending to your big bads, and now nothing else will be bought. You've hurt the entire system by not having any kind of potential rhythm to it. You've just justified value. Now, as much as I'm going to be the first person to say to anybody and everybody, get the cards you want, have fun, it's a game. And we need to have fun with this game. But at the same time, it's a card collector game, so there's resource value associated to it. And you preach so heavily about the collector's token system being great. But this idea of inconsistent value, I'm not going to go to Kelly Blue Book to know that my car is going to be $2,000 next week. I look at the value now. And when I look at the value now I can only see 3 cards, and next week, 4 cards. That's the only value I see at 6,000 tokens. Everything else is too varied. So if you're going to lock cards into Series 4, like Darkhawk, like Knull. That's fine. I'm okay with that idea, to have the kind of bads. If you're going to lock cards into the big bad system, I can still kind of get behind that, even though I hate it. I don't like it, but I can kind of get behind it. It's everything else in between, that if you don't let cards drop on a somewhat regular slope, and then you can choose based on metrics of performance of who bought and who didn't, when you decide to hold back a card and when you decide to expedite a card through, that is incredibly worrisome and is really economically stupid.
So I'm going to go off of a little bit different angle, because there's points you make that I agree with. There's points you make that I'm kind of meh on. Right.
That's just because I'm passionate.
No, and again, I totally get that. Right. So I think that when we look at the first half, so I'm just going to touch on the first half, which is the easy one, which is, hey, things may not start in Series 5. Perfect. I think that's a perfect way of handling it. So we're going to be talking about the other part in just a second, which is moving cards around in the series, right? So the first part, great. And I think you agree with that. It's great that there's going to be some of these cards that aren't warranted to be Series 5, and they can start in 4. Sure. Not a problem. The problem that we have, and exactly how you said it, is not knowing when. Not knowing that this card that I bought at Series 5 is when is it going to go to Series 4? When is it going to go to Series 3? And I do think that going from 5 to 3 is going to be, every time they do it, they are going to get people that whine and complain, because you're either going to have the people who spent the 6,000 tokens want to get some kind of compensation, give me 3,000 tokens back or whatever, because, I could have literally waited X weeks, months, whatever, and it would have just went to 3 and I would have got it for free, because, once a month you get a free Series 3 card, right?
That's right.
So
that's right.
It is one of those things where that is going to be rough. The 5 to 3 is going to be rough. As far as kind of looking at that, I still look at the game in the fact that, hey, when something comes into the game, you as a player have to decide, am I going to spend my tokens on this? Whether they drop next month or not, at the given time of them coming into the game, you have to decide, is this worth it for me to play it? And again, I'm taking a stance of, there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with me on this, but that's fine. And I just look at it as things like right now, right? I got Iron Lad, I got Howard the Duck, and I'll get Hayat Evo. Living Tribunal is one of those that I will not pick up on day one. I will wait to see if people can show me how quote unquote he is busted, because he is not Nexus. He is not, because I've heard a lot of people say, oh, Living Tribunal is just Nexus. He is not Nexus. He is different than Nexus. So I look at the fact of, like, when I make my choices on these cards, whether Living Tribunal 2 months later is Series 3 or not, when I purchased him or when I do, I'm making the decision at the time that I am okay with spending these tokens for this card. And if he goes to Series 3 a month later, that's on me. And I think that that's going to have to be the thing. Will I be a little salty? Yes. There's a lot of people that were salty. I can't remember if it was you or Matrim that got Darkhawk, and literally like 2 days later it was announced that Darkhawk was going to 4.
That was me.
Yes. So
that was me.
So I get that. I get that saltiness. Just like, honestly, right now, I literally just opened a whole bunch of caches and I got Shayna, Dazzler, and Shadow King. Right. So like now they're going to Series 3, and it's like, if I would have just waited a couple weeks, I would have been able to now open, one of the other cards, and I would have opened those because they would have been Series 3. I wouldn't have had to open as many caches. Right. So there's always those instances that you have to be prepared for. So overall, kind of going back to the point here, like, I think the 5 to 3 is going to be the one that always sends up red flags. So I'm not sure I fully agree on it, but I understand why, because of Snow Guard. I don't think it's going to be a common thing where something goes from 5 to 3. I think maybe they're doing this for Snow Guard. I think they may be doing this for a couple cards they already know that they have locked into Series 5 that aren't going to make a difference going to 4. Like Dazzler, like Shayna, right? Going into 4 didn't really help Dazzler. Therefore, she's going right into 3 afterwards. So I don't think that'll be a common practice of 5 to 3. If it is, we're going to have problems. But I don't think it will be. I think they're just setting us up because there's a couple cards like potentially Stegron and Snow Guard that they already know we probably need to get them down as quick as possible so people actually play with them. And
well, hang on though, because that expedition hurts twofold though. It hurts the community, like I said, because it justifies proof that this is a bad card. Secondly, it further aggravates the top spenders in the game, who are the ones who get the cards. And I'm not talking even content creators. I'm talking just whales in general who like to, have all the shiny toys. They spend the money, they get the tokens, they get the cards. And then you're going to tell that person that, oh, sorry, we gave you a bad card. Everybody else is going to get it for free, but you had 1 month at 6,000 tokens. I'm sorry. Those are not the people to piss off.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. I don't think, and we'll have to see how often it happens. I don't think we're going to see that often at all. And so, but I agree with you. I mean, it's not good that they're quote unquote admitting that a card is bad and they're going to throw it from 5 to 3, but I don't think it will happen as often as it's there. I think they're just covering themselves to say we have the ability if we want to.
Yeah, but it's still the factor of unknown. Yeah. It's still the factor of unknown. Like Ghost is a perfect example of this, right? Before Ghost came out, everybody and their sister as a content creator was like, this is going to be broken. And then all of the content creators who got it were like, yeah, about that. This was absolutely awful. So a lot of people got Ghost and were not happy about it because we all hyped it up. It got a lot of sales.
No. We did not do that. I was not part of that.
I'm talking as a community. I didn't either. I couldn't afford it at the time, but like I literally just got Ghost today now because of all the drops. Yeah. But I'm saying that there were so many of us that were like, wow, this is such a really good mechanic. It's going to be so critical for certain turn types of mechanics and deck building and blah, blah, blah. And it ended up being mediocre. And a lot of people regret purchasing it, even though the numbers said otherwise. So I like that they're trying to alleviate some of that by saying some cards are going to drop into Series 4 instead of going from 5 to 3. And I do agree that it's most likely going to end up being Snow Guard. I think Stegron's fine. I think he could do a slow progression.
I think Stegron can go to 4 fine.
I would have less of an issue with it if they outright said all cards that start in Series 5 will spend at least 1 month in Series 5, at least 1 month in Series 4, and then drop to Series 3. That long of a timeline, if you want people to test, they'll wait 2 months. But you don't have to force feed it and piss off half of the community in the process. And that's a part of the issue that I have with it is the inconsistency in regards to the economic side of the game, because it creates an unlevel field to work from. And it has nothing to do. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the problem that Snap has, and this is another thing that's come up in some of the conversations and people look at it differently, but I think the problem that we have with Snap right now is we get a card a week in the game. We do not get sets of cards. If you look at Hearthstone, if you look at Magic, if you look at Pokemon, whatever card, you get sets, which are, here is 50 to 100 cards that we are putting in this game. And even with Hearthstone, I think it's less than that, but it's still a lot. And it's all these cards are going to come to the game and they are going to make a difference. Whether it's the common ones, the uncommon, all the way up to the mythic, which if we're kind of equating this, a mythic is like a Series 5 card in Snap. And they all come in at different levels and you get to play them and you get to whatever. Because we have this weird, mechanic, which is unique to Snap and it's fine. It's 1 a week. But now that we're going to be sticking stuff into 4, sticking stuff into 5, sticking stuff into 3, moving things around, like it's going to be harder for them to create a cadence because of the fact that now we're going to get something in 5, something in 4 the next week. The next one goes into 5, the next one goes into 4. And if we have this whole like, hey, every month things are going to shift, like it's going to be too easy to have a full collection. Again, not for the average person that doesn't spend a dime. The free to plays, you're still going to have a hard time getting a full collection. But anybody who buys bundles that are coming out and things like that, like I feel like you're going to have a pretty full collect. I mean, minus maybe 1 or 2 cards you don't care about at all.
Yeah.
Like you're going to have most of the collection. And I think that That's the problem we're going to start to run into if they create it will be here 1 month later, move down. So I get what you're saying though. It really shouldn't go from 5 to 3. And again,
it shouldn't. It shouldn't. There's no.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
holding.
No matter how bad Snowguard is, there's
it.
no reason. Hold. I won't hold back if you haven't noticed, but because
I'm waiting to see the first time they do it, because again, I read this as, hey, this means we may. So I read this as I'm saying like, hey, let's see how it goes, because I think Kitty is the test of this, whether we know it or not. Kitty is the test of this. Kitty came out and they have 2 weeks worth of people playing Kitty. And now Kitty's in everybody's collection as a Series 3. So it's not a 1-to-1 identical move, but it's one of those of them to say
it's definitely not.
It's not 1-to-1, but it is one of those of like, how many people are now going to test Kitty? Because I think from the dev side, there's 2 teams. There's a team that's, I got to make money off this game and this is how I do it. And then there's a team that is, I enjoy building stuff for this game and I enjoy seeing the community use it. Right. And there's overlap in that. But I'm just saying, like, I think the team that they're like, hey, I love how Snowguard works and I want more people to play it so that we can see how potentially good she is. And they're on the board of Snowguard being out into Series 3. Right. And again, I know we keep saying Snowguard. There's nothing saying Snowguard's going to go from 5 to 3. I'm just giving that as an example because nobody has her. And the only creators that got her literally said the next day, do not get her. Meaning, I mean, we talked about on one of the podcasts earlier where like you went on the website and there's like barely any game data around her.
Yeah, like fractional. It just registered on snap.fan, finally with enough game data last week.
Yeah.
They finally had enough game data to actually get an actual real percentage of nothing. But so much
that's why I'm bringing it up.
I also have to think that Second Dinner has a second agenda in regards to this, and it's exclusively selfish because with all the series drops, I opened up my caches and I held on 55 caches. I had enough to get all of the series, 3-4 cards when they dropped, right? Yeah. I opened them up. First cache, Snowguard.
Yeah.
First cache.
So you tell me if she's good. You tell me if she deserves to stay in 5.
I don't know. I don't know, and I still won't know. I want to see how long I can go with 0 boosters on her. Like I have 0 incentive right now to play her. Get her.
It's going to pop up. That's going to be your mystery boosters.
Exactly. I'm going to figure out something, and it's going to completely mess with y'all. But like, I don't know. No, like it was literally the very first. I had 55 to open. First crack. There she is. Birds and Hawks. I'm like,
no.
Oh my god.
Anyway,
I digress. We're going off topic a bit, but
still haven't opened one. So.
And I
haven't opened a Series 5 card.
I mean, it was Super Skrull and Snowguard. So which one's better, none or those two? Because I got Super Skrull like in the first week or so. That
I bought him on the first day he came out. So
okay, you had it worse. Okay, so then those that did drop, just to clarify the list, because we've kind of gone all over the place about it. So they dropped Master Mold, Negasonic, Teenage Warhead, and Nimrod down from 5 to 4. They dropped down Sentry, Silver Surfer, Dazzler, Shadow King, Sauron, and Ghost now into Series 3. And then they held onto Darkhawk and Knull in Series 4, plus Stature, Shanna, Zabu, and MODOK are all in Series 4 also. No drops for MODOK either. The Series 3 thing is interesting too, because hang
on. Shouldn't MODOK have dropped?
Correct. MODOK was scheduled to potentially drop. They held on to the season pass card longer. I know.
So I want to touch on that just for 2 seconds because everybody is whining about Darkhawk. MODOK should have dropped based on this whole schedule, and yet nobody has said a word about MODOK because a fraction of people play the MODOK deck. So I'm just kind of throwing it out there where if it literally would have been something like Sentry instead of Darkhawk, this would not have been a problem. It is the fact that it is Darkhawk and everybody wanted Darkhawk, but they haven't said a word about MODOK.
Null. Everyone wanted Darkhawk.
I know. It's the two biggest cards
I'm
out
sorry,
of these.
I stand corrected.
Cards,
Wait,
right?
no, I want to correct myself. MODOK was not supposed to drop, if I remember correctly, because Surfer did. Because it was Surfer
dropped to 3.
Right.
Okay.
Surfer dropped to 3. Zabu is technically the next up to drop because that's what came right after Surfer, and then MODOK was after that.
Do they
Season
stay in those? Wow. I'd have to pull up the calendar, but I'm not saying you're wrong.
Calendars
I'm just saying I'd have to pull up the calendar.
Shite anymore.
Yeah, I just have to see how long they stay there because that surprises me that we've got two of them still in Series 4 with Nimrod now going in there, right? So
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
so now we're gonna have
Zabu
3 series cards sitting in Zabu. 4. Yeah,
Zabu should have been one that dropped, not MODOK, if one was going to drop.
I didn't notice Zabu until you mentioned him. But that's what I'm saying. It seems like there's a lot of cards not moving the way we think they should. Yet everybody focused on the 2 cards that everybody wanted to move. Right.
Welcome to the wacky inflatable calendar of Marvel Snap. We'll see what happens. But all right. But with Series 3 though, there's good and bad with the Series 3 acquisition system because they're bringing back your ability to spend 1,000 collector tokens to open up a Series 3 card. The thing is, it's a loot box. So it's literally a mystery card. It's something you don't have. You spend 1,000 tokens and you get another Series 3 card, essentially. But you don't know which one. So you can't target the cards like you used to. You couldn't just hold on to your tokens and then, ooh, finally, Sarah's in my shop. Got Sarah. Oh, Arrow's in my shop. Finally. It's now just, oh, ta-da, I've got Ghost.
Yeah. I'm okay with that. I know people will not be okay with that, right? Because of the fact that they went from you can purchase Series 3 cards and you can do just like we do with the other stuff. Then they went and they give you 1 free a month, right? They took that away and so many people were so mad. And I get the reason why they're mad because it was harder to get Series 3 complete, especially because we continually dump cards into Series 3. So it's like the average person, it's going to take them a while. And the reason why, for those that don't know this, the reason why you want to get Series 3 complete is because then your caches, when you were to hit a Series 3 card, you get tokens instead. So theoretically, you'll get your tokens faster so you can get your Series 4 and 5 cards and things like that. So this was kind of the issue that everybody had with these Series 3 cards not being purchasable. So they brought them back, but it's random. I'm okay with it. I know some people aren't going to be, but it's like opening a cache. It's opening a guaranteed Series 3 cache, which is what I feel like they need on the track. This is what I feel like they need for Series 4. Like, here's the thing. If I'm a whale and I'm a Kraken and whatever, literally if you just had, instead of whatever they have, here's a box. And when you open it, even if it's 20% chance to get a Series 4 card, right? And I can just literally spend my gold or my tokens on those, I would do it. And this is kind of what you're getting to do with these Series 3 cards.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I just don't like, the only thing I don't like about it is the fact that it's 1,000 collector's tokens, because previously it allowed you to spend 1,000 collector's tokens on a card that you wished to target. And then you could target that card, pin that card, and get it once you had your tokens. Now it's for the same value. It's a raffles chance. So I don't mind the idea of it being a mystery card. I mind the idea of it being the same value, considering that 2 months ago, you could spend that same value and target the very specific card you wanted. So for this, I would have said maybe if they did this for 800 collector's tokens or 900 collector's tokens, even anything reduced from the previous value of what it was the last time, I'd be okay with it, because then you are saving in comparison to what it was, but now you're paying a price, which is randomness, versus spend it anyway. By the way, it's now random. And so it's a give and take. Like, I'm glad that they have the ability to get these cards and accelerate your Series 3 collection, but it doesn't accelerate your Series 3 track. When you would have pulled that card, you still have to go through the collection track and hit that landmark, and it'll give you 100 collector's tokens anyway. So you don't shrink the ceiling to finishing Series 3 by doing those processes. All you do is accelerate how fast certain cards actually get into your collection. So just give and take with that.
Yeah, and they did this. Here's the thing. They did this on purpose. They did this so that you didn't target the 4 cards that you wanted and then ignored the rest. They want you to spend those tokens. And so it's random. So I get what you're saying. Maybe a reduction would have been fine. to do it, especially with so many cards going into 3 right now. I mean, that level is getting pretty big. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things where they did that because most likely, I mean, I remember seeing in the Facebook groups all the time, is death worth it? Is, I mean, like every card you can think of, like, is this card worth it? And like now it's just like, all right, instead, just Series 3, just open it, cross your fingers, see what you get. Again, some people are going to hate it. I think it's fine, but it's hard for me to judge that too, because I've been collection complete before tokens ever came out. So
but here's the thing. What would you prefer? 6 cards at random, or a card that converts 6 of the cards that you got back in Series 1 and 2 into new cards?
So you're going to throw away cards?
No. What would you rather get? 6 cards at random or High Evolutionary?
Oh, no. I agree with you. Like, I think it's going to be way better off targeting. And I even said this right when tokens came out. This whole argument of finish Series 3 to get tokens faster to go to Series 4 and 5, I don't think that's the key. Honestly, I think the key is saving your tokens to target the big bads, target the cards that you want to use, whether they're Series 4 or 5 or whatever. And I get that by doing this Series 3, you can't target things like death if you're wanting to play a death deck. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard. It's hard, but it's definitely one of those things where, yeah, if I had 6,000 tokens, I would definitely get High Evo rather than 6 random Series 3 cards.
And this leads to a point that I wanted to make earlier. And I honestly we got caught up in it and I forgot to make it because it's a really important fact about guaranteeing the Series 3, guaranteed bads at $6,000 with no depreciating value. One of the things that absolutely irritates me about this is that the entire community, not the entire community, I overstayed on that, a very large percentage of the community complains about going up against Galactus and what these changes are doing now, also with the Series 3 card acquisition process now being at random. This also incentivizes those big bad purchases to happen first, because you can build a Series 2 Galactus deck and be competitive.
When does tokens come into play?
Collection level 1000.
Okay. I was thinking for some reason you didn't get to start doing that until you're in Series 3.
No, you start getting your tokens in Series 2. In Series 3. But that's what I'm saying. Even if you just used Series 2, not knowing what other Series 3 cards you got between collection level 500 and 1000, even if you ignore those, you can still build a competitive Galactus deck. And that's a part of the issue with the randomness for these Series 3 card acquisitions too, is that we have pushed the agenda of Thanos and Galactus in so many different ways that the only thing I can do as a creator is remind Kang.
He's a big bad too.
We don't talk about Kang. We don't talk about Kang. we don't. Not until Conquest comes out. We don't talk about Kang. Until then, we're good. The biggest thing that I worry, that I wish to communicate to the community is get the cards you want.
Yeah.
Don't just get the best value. Get the cards that your heart desires. Because if you only go by value, like we'll talk about value as a creator community, we'll tell you if it's a good value or a bad value. But if you want the card, get the card. Yeah. Efficient or inefficient. That's the most important thing, is remember to have fun with this game. But if you only look at it from the math, this is really stupid. And it gives me some concerns. And I feel passionate about it because I try to articulate to the community very often multiple different ways to have fun. And one of the most consistent ways I get people talking back at me from the community is the way to have fun is to have all the things. And even though I don't agree with that being a tactic, many people feel that way. And when you take that away from those many people who pay physical dollars to make those things happen, and you take that away, that worries me. And I know Second Dinner listens, and I really hope they listen, because these next 24 hours is going to be sugar-coated dog shit, because there's a lot of really good things in this, and I don't want to undersell them, and that's the sugar, because that's the first thing you should see. But then there's all of this other stuff underneath it, and that's the stuff that we also have to talk about too, like how you get these tokens, because now they're giving us more ways to earn tokens. And they kind of coded this the same way, in my opinion, where they said, hey, we're going to incentivize the weekends because I think it was Jeff who talked about it earlier today too, who's put it brilliantly, which is most of us who do the weekly missions and are active daily players, your weekly missions are done by like Friday, maybe Saturday at the latest. So this is now incentivizing Saturday, Sunday play, which is something obviously they want to do, which is smart as a game company to do. They push weekend activity because some people have a lot more time on the weekend than they did during the week. But the thing that I didn't like about it was that the only way to get tokens through these extra missions is to play on the weekend, and you can only do it if you use the new card of that week. The newly or new, we don't know if it's of that week or that month. The newly released cards will also earn you collector tokens over the weekend. Now you can also
No, it says card. It doesn't say cards.
Card.
So it says card.
With
so
a newly released card to earn tokens. Yeah.
It will be that week's card.
You spend 6,000 tokens or 3,000 tokens to get a card, and then the value of that card technically, increases because you may have spent 6,000, but if you get back, 1,000 or 1,500 or 500, whatever it is, technically you're now dropping the overall price of what that card was.
Yeah.
So it does balance it a little bit, but I can't have an opinion yet on it fully because I don't know what those numbers look like. Because if it reduces it down 25%, it's a great win. If it reduces it down 10%, it's unnecessary. I don't like the season pass one to earn gold because you're really going all in on the season pass and getting people to spend $10 a month for basically a fabricated subscription model, and then winning games to earn credits for those who spend absolutely none. That's a win-win on that one. I have no issues about that. The paywall behind the season pass card, I have a little bit of an issue with. The newly released card, being that you can get collector's tokens via free-to-play mechanics, that one I have a little bit less of an issue with. But I need to see how much comes back.
Yeah, and it also says, the announcement will vary based on difficulty. What I will also be interested to see is when we get that new card, that's the Series 4, what does that look like in rewards back compared to a Series 5 card? Because to your point, like if it's the same amounts, then maybe if you don't have a lot of tokens, you skip the Series 5 cards, and the Series 4 cards where you pick it up because maybe it pays for 50% of the card and you're getting it way cheaper, but yeah, it's one of those things where like none of this bothers me. I know it bothers some. I know people are going to read into a bunch of the stuff, but I just look at this being the fact, to your point, like sometimes I'm beating my weekly stuff. Sometimes I'm literally not playing during the weekends. And then all of a sudden I remember, because again, this last month I've played like 30 minutes a day at most. So I really haven't focused on the daily missions and stuff like that. So it ends up being something that Monday, right before, reset, is when I'm hitting all my weekly stuff. So this is one of those that it incentivizes doing it. The gold on the season pass, sure, using season pass card. The way I also look at that is like a lot of people are going to focus that being, oh, play this card, buy this card, get this gold. But think about it. Your season pass, the amount that you get in a season pass, gold, tokens, or not tokens, credits, gold, all of that. Your season pass, that card in your season pass is like $3 at most.
Hold on. Most of those are free. The cosmetics are primarily what come with the season pass, the card and the cosmetics. All that other stuff is on the free track where you just play throughout the month. So you don't get extra gold. Yeah, you don't get a tremendous amount of value that way.
I mean, cosmetics are value, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm talking like credits and gold specifically. You don't get an exponential crazy amount because of the season pass. So let's take a little bit of removal on that. But now it does incentivize the season pass because you can play the cards and then get more gold. So the value of the season pass increases via this mechanic. That's what I'm saying.
No. So I'm looking at this. 49 is 500 gold. You have to have the season pass to get the 500 gold.
Right. Scroll
there's
down.
Another credits. No, that was 49. I can't see anything that I've already unlocked.
That's because you're an old man.
No, I'm talking about like, because I've already gotten it. I've already picked it up. It doesn't tell me.
Yeah. No, if you're already past it, that's fine. But I can tell you is confidently.
100 credits. That's not free. So I'm not saying it's a ton, but there's 500 gold right there that's not free.
That's the big one.
You have to have the pass.
That's the big one. Right. That's the big one. That's because you're working towards it.
Right. So what I'm saying is, I think all of this is, yes, you could look at it as like, oh, this makes me have to, because people will look at it this way, right? The people that are like, I'm not going to buy the season pass, I don't want to give them money. And then they look at this and they go, oh, it's just another reason why they're making us buy the season pass. But here's the thing. I think when you look at that $9.99 season pass and you look at what you're getting in a card early, and at this point we can tell, I mean, early means like 3 months early, right? Before it becomes like kind of attainable to a free to play person.
Right.
3 months early, plus the random stuff that's in there, even if that's 1,000 gold, even if that's 1,000 credits, like when you start to equate that back in the $10, the card itself's not that much. So this is just another incentive to say, we want to give you more, but we don't want to add more stuff to the season pass. We just want to do it a different way. Use the card. Right. And it's funny because go ahead.
No, finish up.
I was gonna say, I have to say it's kind of funny because I had Lethal's reach out to me and he was like, hey, did you see the new season pass quest where you have to use Star-Lord, play X Games as Star-Lord? He's like, is this the first time they've done this? I'm like, no, it's not, because I remember back when I first started the game, there was some quests that were like, use America Chavez and stuff. But I was like, but you know what? If I recall, that wasn't season pass. That was your intro track where you're unlocking your cards that made you do that. So maybe this is one of the first times where it said use a specific card in a season pass, which is what this will look like with that card.
Right. And you know what I mean? You see, I had it ready on the YouTube screen. Like I was literally about to transition into that as a sidebar, because I agree. It's something worth noting that I love that this is in here, because granted, you can really only limit this to pool 1 and series 1 and series 2 cards. But even still, it's incentivizing diversity, and maybe if it temporarily even breaks up a little bit of a meta, because now you've got to play Star-Lord for 10 games, you know what?
Minimum.
It's done its job.
Just do the Star-Lord thing. If you're good at it.
I'm personally like waiting 3 days because everybody's playing Star-Lord right now, and then in a couple of days I'll just be like, haha, remember this mission you finished? Like, haha, there's my Star-Lord.
And they'll be playing better decks, and you'll be like, I should have done it when they weren't playing their good decks, when they were playing Star-Lord.
No, I think for the element of surprise.
I was like, and when Liesel's mentioned this, I was like, at least it's not Drax. I mean, at least Star-Lord is like
not yet.
Turn 2 with Nebula.
Just wait. See, that justifies it if that's the case. That justifies the Drax buff nerf thing adjustment. If come chapter 4, it's win 10 games with Drax starting in your deck. And I'm glad it's not Drax on the or in this case, Star-Lord. I'm glad it's not Star-Lord on the battlefield. Because as long as he's just in the deck and then you never play him, it still works.
Play him in a bounce deck. Now that you have Kitty Pryde, you have Nebula. He's really good when you Nebula with Star-Lord, but put him in a Beast deck. Throw him down, see if you can catch him. If not, pick him up with Beast and try to catch him again. And if you caught him the first time, he's going to be really big the second time. So it's definitely one of those things where I do think it's fun that they are doing this. Again, some people hate this because they want to play their one deck the whole time and they don't want to change it, but it does diversify. I've seen a few Star-Lords since this one popped up, so I thought that was interesting. And again, seeing back in the patch notes where they're saying, hey, we may have a mission where you can get gold for playing with Nebula. You may get gold for playing with, whoever's next in the Spider-Man. Is it Spider-Man 2099? Who's the actual card? Ghost Spider?
For the season pass? Ghost Spider.
Yeah, Ghost Spider. Yeah, so if it's like, hey, play with Ghost Spider and you can get some free gold, like, why not? Why not?
Yeah,
it'll again kind of help with the diversity. So
speaking of, these new cards that are coming out, I'm going to just do a semi segue. Because there's one last thing I want to talk about, even though I'm going to caveat it. Okay. Even though this is still in data mine this week until we get an official announcement. And by the time this comes out, even later today, we might get an official announcement about this. In the data mine, there has been a change to a card this month that will be dropping in the game very soon. Yeah. And that's High Evolutionary. We've all talked about it, that High Evolutionary is a crazy powerful card on curve even at 4/7. Yeah. And according to the data mine, he is now a 4/4. And to me, still doesn't matter because you're not worried about playing him. And I think it's perfect for him, given the amount of buff that he gives to all of the other cards. 4/7 was really strong, like really, really strong. And then he gave all those buffs. So even if you didn't have any other options on turn 4, still a 7-power card. That was like, damn, he was beefy.
I mean, he was better. He was better than any other the 4-drops. But I mean, he's one of those cards where look, he's got to be perfect. So he's got to be symmetrical. He's got to be 4/4. Makes sense for his character in general.
Sure, you're not thinking Living Tribunal?
No. High Evolutionary. He tries to make everything perfect. Go watch Guardians. You'll understand. So but again, I think this is a fine change with that. I can see people saying, but he's a big bad. He should have a bunch of power, but Galactus doesn't. Galactus went down in power.
Kang has none.
Yeah. So
he has no powers.
I think a 4/4 is fine. And to your point, like with what you're doing with your deck, that 3 power is probably not going to matter. And the 3 power is probably overpowered. So I think it's fine. We'll have to see if this is true, but it also wouldn't surprise me because we've seen a lot of stuff, right? We've seen a lot of cards come out and then there's some kind of like artwork header, whatever that they put out, and the numbers are wrong. And everybody goes, wait a minute, they're changing it to that. And it's like, no, that's what it was when they made this graphic 2 months before they released them. So it doesn't surprise me, but it's definitely one of those to keep your eyes out as far as he could come in as a 4/4 rather than that 4/7. And don't get caught off guard by it, I guess.
Either way, I'm getting him. And either way, I would recommend people to get him if you like deck building, because he's going to give so much diversity to so many new and existing archetypes. Big fan. And I don't even have him yet. So I'm all about it. I don't think the 3 power changes my decision to get him whatsoever, nor should I think it change anybody's decision to get him. Not just as a big bad for all of the reasons we've stated in this podcast so far, but just because of what he's going to do to the other 7 cards also, with all of the power upticks and then reductions on the other side and the reveals and cost reductions. And there's so much that's going to happen with this dude. So I'm a fan of them dropping his power. It's appropriate for him. It needed to happen. It needed to happen. Let's be honest. As much as some people might complain about it, it really needed to happen. So I'm okay with it. But again, this is a data mine. And I'm not going to, in this podcast, go into any of the other data mines that are being put out there right now, because a lot of the data mines, just like High Evolutionary, subject to change. There are some big changes to some previously data mined cards. There are some new data mine changes that are out there right now. Costs going up, the June pass, all this kind of stuff, stat changes. Listen, here on this podcast, we will talk data mines when we feel confident in what they are. And it's still, we're recording this less than 5 hours from the release of all of this information. There's still too much. So maybe come Monday, maybe next, Thursday, Friday, whatever it is that we do a follow-up one, when that information's a little bit more anchored, maybe we'll talk about what's coming in June. But for now,
I will say, the only thing that I think was a really cool thing, if it ends up being true, is Echo. As far as new cards go, I just want to talk about the mechanic real quick. Just 2 seconds.
I'm not prepared for this with graphics on the stream.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm going to talk about it just real quick because I don't know if it's going to be true or not. But Echo is one of the cards that just says it's a 1-drop. Again, no idea if this is true on stats and things like that. But the next, if a card were to be played here with the ongoing, it gets removed. So when we talk about answers to things like Cosmo, because everybody always asks and things like that, whether this is true or not, I'm just pulling it up because I feel like when we think of this whole thing of quote unquote, they're scraping the bottom of the barrel, which is never true, but that's what people say. It's like them thinking of these types of mechanics is awesome. It kind of goes back to Stegron, Snow Guard, all these things where maybe they didn't work quite as well as we thought they would work or whatever. I just think it's really cool that they're always trying to think of like these different things. And it's not just this is an ongoing, this is on reveal, this is a whatever. There's a lot of these text-based cards that can do some stuff to get around those mechanics. So like you said, I mean, we'll dig into some of the different cards that pop up that we think are cool, but I just wanted to kind of say that one is just a teaser, and the fact that no idea when it's coming out. It may change 7 times before it ever comes out, but I love that they are looking at these mechanics of how do we look at these problematic cards, right? So think about the fact that like somebody Galactuses you and then you throw this down. It's like, oh, that's a nice null you got there. Gone. I don't have to worry about Enchantress. I don't have to worry about doing any of that to it. Literally, Echo just says this lane you can't use ongoing. So, you know, Patriot, right? Like Cosmo's not going to save your Patriot. So, you know, I mean, it's just one of those things where like it's kind of cool how they're able to just really do these cool things with cards. And, you know, again, kind of wrapping it all back up. It's going to be cool to see as these new cards come out where they get placed. Series 5, 4, whatever, you know, and what this does to people actually being able to use the cards. Because I'd love to use Snow Guard, but I'm going to wait till she gets to Series 3 before I ever mess with her. So
I'll let you know how she goes, because if I can get her to work, you're damn right I'm going to make a video about it. Because as of right now, it's just not going to happen. So overall, you know, the patch today was pretty wild and has a lot of conversation coming from not just us, but the entire community. We invite the community to have that conversation with us. If you're on YouTube, use the comments down below, or you can contact us in the information in the description of the podcast. Listen, I want to open up this conversation to all of you because we want to hear from you. We want to hear what you think about all of this, because we have loud voices and we will amplify and be your megaphone as much as we can, just like we use this avenue as a megaphone for our thoughts and opinions on what's happening here with Marvel Snap. So this is that moment that I say to anyone and everyone who has just found us at the end of this podcast. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening and watching. That over there is DefaultDan. Myself, I am ItsGuestGaming. You can find us both on Twitch, on YouTube, and always Wednesday nights at snap.fan on Twitch for Wednesday Night Snap. More information coming. I know I'll be there tomorrow broadcasting, I believe, with you. It's going to be a good time, as it always is. Great casual competition, and maybe some more big news and changes coming in the very near future. So stay tuned, everybody. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us this afternoon. Oh boy, is it time to go play with Snow Guard yet?
Do it, man. Do it, man. You got to find some use out of her, right?
I mean, she's got pretty colors.
Use her on hot locations to turn them off.
That's just mean.